I woke up with screws in my spine, a throat that felt like sandpaper, and a single voicemail that turned my whole life into a nightmare. My mother's voice was soft, almost sweet, like she was leaving a reminder to drink water. But the words didn't match the tone. She said, "Maddie, don't panic, we sold your condo. It's already handled." And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. The surgery wasn't the only thing I'd lost while I was unconscious. But that wasn't the worst part. Because the next thing I discovered made it clear this wasn't family drama. This was a plan. My name is Madeline Walton. Most people call me Maddie. I'm 31, and I work as a veterinary technician at Maplewood Animal Clinic in a small, fictional town called Greenville. I'm the person who kneels beside your shaking dog, whispering "good boy" while the vet does what needs doing. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. I had a simple life: early shifts, late paperwork, weekend grocery runs, and a quiet pride that I'd built something stable on my own. My car was a 10-year-old crossover with peeling paint on one door, and my biggest luxury was good coffee and a candle that made my living room smell like vanilla and clean laundry. The best part of my life, my anchor, was my condo at Laurel Ridge. 2 bedrooms, a little balcony, and sunlight that hit the kitchen tiles in the late afternoon like a warm spotlight. It wasn't just a home. It was proof that I could survive without anyone rescuing me. That condo didn't come from luck. It came from my grandmother, Beverly Walton. Beverly was the kind of woman who didn't raise her voice, but somehow every room listened when she spoke. She passed away 3 years earlier, and she left the condo to me, fully paid, no mortgage. She also left me $22,000 in cash. My younger sister, Paige, got the same amount. And my mother, Gail, got nothing. That part wasn't a mistake. Beverly loved Gail the way you love someone you keep an eye on. In Beverly's will, she wrote, calmly, legally, and clearly, that she had concerns about Gail's financial decision-making. It was the most polite way to say, "I don't trust her." If you've ever been the responsible child in a family with a favorite, you already know where this goes. Paige was the favorite the way the sun is the center of a solar system. Everything circled around her, and everyone else learned to adjust their orbit. Paige could cry and get what she wanted. Paige could make a mess and someone else would clean it. Paige could waste money and call it living. And if I questioned anything, I was judgmental or cold or making it weird. My dad, Robert, used to balance it out. He wasn't perfect, but he was fair. When Robert died suddenly years ago, the family changed. The house got quieter and my mother's favoritism got louder. Paige burned through her $22,000 inheritance in a matter of months. Designer bags, a beach trip she posted online like she was famous, and a car lease she couldn't afford. Gail didn't get angry at Paige. She got angry at the universe for not giving Paige more. Meanwhile, I used my inheritance like a lifeline. I fixed the condo, replaced things that were breaking, paid the taxes, built savings, and treated my home like it mattered. Because it did. When you grow up in a family where love feels conditional, stability becomes its own kind of safety. Then my back started to fail me. It began as a dull ache after long shifts, lifting anxious dogs, bending over exam tables, helping the vet restrain animals that didn't understand what was happening. Over time, the pain stopped being occasional and started becoming a schedule. It woke me up at night. It made standing feel like my lower spine was grinding. Eventually, I couldn't pretend it was just stress. After months of appointments, scans, and physical therapy that didn't hold, my surgeon, Dr. Mehta, sat across from me with a calm face and said the words I'd been dreading: spinal fusion, long surgery, general anesthesia, hardware, recovery measured in weeks, not days. Risks that sounded like a list of everything you don't want to imagine. I tried to be brave. I told friends I was fine. I joked about becoming part robot. But the night before surgery, I cleaned my condo top to bottom like someone coming to inspect it. I folded laundry that didn't need folding. I lined up things on the counter in neat rows. And when I finally sat down on my couch, I stared at the walls and thought, if something happens to me, will anyone protect what I built? I didn't know how sad that question was until later. The morning of surgery, I was in a hospital gown at St. Marlow Medical Center, under bright lights that made everything feel unreal. A nurse checked my bracelet. Someone asked me the same questions 3 times. Another person offered me a medication to relax. When the sedative started to hit, the world softened at the edges, like my thoughts were wrapped in cotton. I could speak, I could nod, I could hold a pen, but my judgment was floating. That's when Gail arrived. My mother walked in with a warm smile and that practiced tone she used when she wanted control without looking controlling. She held my hand. She told me I was brave. She said she'd take care of everything. Then she pulled out a small stack of papers and said, "The nurse said you should sign some forms, honey, just in case, so I can talk to the doctors if you're asleep and they need someone." It sounded reasonable, comforting even, and I was scared. I was minutes away from being wheeled into surgery, so I signed. I didn't read every page. I didn't ask questions. I didn't imagine my mother would do what she did next. And if you're listening, you might be thinking, I would never sign without reading. I used to think that about other people too, but fear changes you. Medication changes you. Trust changes you. And sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones counting on your trust the most. 7 hours later, I woke up. The first thing I felt was pain, deep, heavy pain that radiated like my body was trying to remember how to be whole again. My throat burned from the breathing tube. My mouth was dry. My back felt like it had been rebuilt with parts that didn't belong to me. I blinked at the ceiling, trying to place myself. Then I reached for my phone. It was full of missed calls. Dozens, most from Gail, a cluster from Paige, and a handful from numbers I didn't recognize. I assumed something had happened to them. A car wreck, an emergency, because why else would my mother call that many times? So I listened to the first voicemail. Gail's voice was cheerful, casual, dangerous in its calm. "Maddie, don't be upset," she said, "but we sold the condo. You were in surgery, so we signed everything for you. It was the only way to make Paige's wedding happen. We'll talk when you're feeling stronger. Love you." I replayed it. I told myself I misheard it. I replayed it again. And then I got a text from an unfamiliar number. "Confirming access for the buyer's inspection tomorrow at 10 a.m. Please leave keys available." I couldn't sit up on my own. I couldn't twist. I couldn't stand. I couldn't even fully process what I was hearing. But the truth hit anyway. While my spine was open on an operating table, my mother sold my home. But that wasn't the worst part, because as the shock spread through me, my brain started asking the question that would change everything. How? How does someone sell a condo they don't own? And why did Gail sound so confident, like she believed she was untouchable? I stared at my hands, at the IV line taped to my skin, at the hospital bracelet with my name on it, and I felt something colder than fear. Clarity. The kind of clarity you get when your life is being stolen and you realize you're the only one who can stop it. So I did the first smart thing I'd done in days. I didn't call Gail back. I didn't scream. I didn't text Paige. I didn't beg. I called my best friend, Josie Callahan. Josie and I had been close since our college days at Redmont University. She's the kind of woman who doesn't flinch when the room is on fire. She checks where the exits are, finds the extinguisher, and starts making a plan. Josie worked as a senior paralegal for a real estate attorney named Warren Ostrowski. When she answered, I didn't even waste time on hello. I whispered, "My mom sold my condo while I was in surgery." Josie went quiet for one beat. Then she said, "Don't talk to anyone else, save everything, I'm coming." She arrived before my hospital ice chips melted. Josie walked into my room with her hair pulled back, her eyes sharp, and a calm that made me feel less alone. I handed her my phone. She listened to the voicemail. She read the texts. She counted the calls. And as her face changed, I knew this wasn't going to end with a family meeting and an apology. Josie looked at me and said, "Maddie, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is fraud." Hearing the word out loud did something to me. It took the story out of the emotional fog and put it into a category that had rules. Fraud meant evidence. Fraud meant consequences. Fraud meant I wasn't crazy for feeling like my world had been invaded. Josie started documenting everything. Screenshots, voicemail recordings, call logs. She even took photos of my hands as they shook because she said, "We might need to show what condition you were in." Then she asked one question that sounded simple but carried a hidden blade. "What exactly did you sign before surgery?" I told her what Gail said. Medical forms. Something so she could speak to doctors. Josie's jaw tightened. "Maddie," she said, "if she sold property, you didn't sign medical forms." That line landed like a warning bell, because it meant the betrayal didn't start when I went under anesthesia. It started before. It started with preparation, with deception, with a plan. And what happened next changed everything, because Josie didn't just comfort me. She went into work mode. The next morning, Josie spoke to her boss, Warren Ostrowski. Warren was a veteran real estate attorney with decades of experience and the kind of voice that sounded calm even when he was furious. He reviewed what we had, voicemail, texts, and the buyer's message. Then he asked Josie to get one thing, the closing paperwork. Because no matter what Gail said, property doesn't transfer on feelings. It transfers on documents. While I lay in bed, unable to move without pain, Josie began pulling strings the way only someone in her profession can. She called the title company. She called the county records office. She called the notary listed on the transaction. And with every call, a clearer picture formed, one that made me sick. Gail didn't have a medical power of attorney. She had a durable financial power of attorney. The kind that gives someone authority over bank accounts, property, everything. It had my signature on it. It was dated the morning of my surgery. I didn't see it coming. I truly didn't. Because I knew my mother was selfish, yes. Manipulative, yes. But I never imagined she'd use my surgery as a window to rob me. Then Warren found something else. A consent statement attached to the closing file, supposedly from me, saying I understood the sale, approved the terms, and had signed willingly. The signature looked like mine at first glance, but it was. It was slightly off, like someone had copied it from memory. Warren said quietly, "This reads like someone trying to make the file look clean." In other words, a forgery. And that was the moment the fear transformed into something else. Because if Gail had forged anything, then this was Paige needed a wedding. This was a crime. But that wasn't the worst part. Because while Warren was digging into the property sale, I discovered Gail was still trying to control my medical care. A discharge planner came into my room and casually mentioned a rehab facility that was far from Greenville, one with a reputation for cutting corners. When I asked why, the planner said, "Your mother requested it. She said costs were a concern." Costs? I stared at the woman like she'd spoken another language. Gail had just taken $195,000 from my home, and she was trying to save money on my recovery. Josie stepped in fast. She had me revoke any authorization Gail had at the hospital. We removed her as emergency contact. We locked down access. We put passwords on everything. That night, Gail's name disappeared from my chart like a ghost being forced out of a house. I checked my bank account next. It was like watching the last thread snap. My savings was nearly empty. A withdrawal had been made, using the same power of attorney, right after the condo sale closed. The money had gone toward event deposits. Paige's wedding, again. And Paige, my sister, still hadn't asked how I was. Instead, Paige sent a text that made my stomach drop. "Please don't make this about you. I've waited my whole life for this. Just be there for me. Stay till the end because this twist shocked everyone, but in that moment I realized Paige wasn't just benefiting. Paige was participating. Maybe not with the paperwork, maybe not with the signatures, but with the entitlement, with the silence, with the expectation that I would swallow it the way I always had. I didn't respond. I didn't give them the fight they wanted. Because Warren's advice was clear. Don't warn them, don't argue, don't educate them. Let the evidence do the talking. So while Gail and Paige planned flowers and seating charts, we built a case. The buyer's name was Glenn Sheehan, a property investor from another part of the state, at least on paper. Glenn told Warren he believed the sale was legitimate. Gail had pitched it as a quick relocation and insisted I didn't want to be bothered. Glenn said he'd paid $195,000 in cash and expected a clean transaction. Now his money was stuck in a deal that smelled like fraud. And when people realize their money is at risk, they become very cooperative. Glenn agreed to provide every email and message he had from Gail. And in those messages, Warren found the detail that made my blood run cold. Gail had contacted Glenn 3 weeks before my surgery. 3 weeks. She had listed the property, suggested the price, and proposed a closing date, my surgery date, before I'd even finalized it with my surgeon. Which meant the part where she urged me, "Don't wait, Maddie, schedule the surgery," wasn't motherly concern. It was scheduling. She didn't take advantage of a surgery date. She steered me toward it. That realization sat in my chest like a weight, because it meant my mother didn't just steal from me while I was vulnerable. She helped create the vulnerability. While Warren prepared an emergency petition to freeze the property and challenge the sale, Josie got another call that felt like the universe quietly handing me a tool. My neighbor, Donna Litvak, called. Donna lived near my condo and had the kind of awareness that comes from years of noticing everything. Donna told me someone had been at my door with a clipboard and a measuring tape. When Donna asked what was happening, the man said he was coordinating access because the condo had been sold. Donna didn't believe it, not because she was protective, though she was, but because Donna said, "Maddie, I would have seen you packing. I would have seen a moving truck. You didn't even change your curtains." Then Donna said the words that made Josie sit up straight. "I have video." Donna had a doorbell camera, and on the day of my surgery, the footage showed Gail entering my condo with a notary, Harold Fenn, and a man Donna didn't recognize. Donna said she could see Gail holding a folder, smiling like she was hosting a party. While I was unconscious in a hospital, Gail was walking through my home like it belonged to her. That footage became our anchor, time-stamped, clear, quietly devastating. Now we had a buyer with records, a neighbor with video, and a legal team that knew exactly what to do. Warren filed for an emergency court order. He placed a legal dispute notice on the condo so it couldn't be transferred again. The court moved quickly because real estate fraud doesn't improve with time, it spreads. Within days, the transaction was frozen. And on the criminal side, Warren advised me to file a report. My hands shook when I spoke to the investigator. I hated that it had come to this. Nobody grows up dreaming of reporting their own mother, but the investigator didn't react like this was family gossip. He reacted like it was what it was. A case. Then came the part that hurt more than paperwork, the emotional struggle. Healing from spinal surgery is already a battle. You wake up every day feeling like your body is negotiating with gravity. You learn how to stand again, how to sit again, how to trust that movement won't break you. And on top of that physical pain, I was grieving something invisible, the belief that my mother would never go this far. I kept replaying the morning of surgery, Gail's hand on my shoulder, her gentle voice, the way she told me she loved me right before I signed my life away. Some nights I couldn't sleep, not from pain meds wearing off, but from the feeling that the world had shifted and I'd been the last one to notice. Josie let me recover at her place after the hospital discharged me. She set up pillows, brought me food, and kept her voice calm even when my emotions weren't. Friends from the clinic checked in. One coworker dropped off a card that said, "You're not alone." And that mattered more than they knew, because betrayal tries to isolate you. It tells you nobody will take your side. It tells you you're overreacting, Community is the antidote. Meanwhile, Gail acted like nothing was happening. She left voicemails about wedding details. She texted fabric swatches. She asked me what hairstyle I wanted if I was going to be part of the day. She spoke like I was being dramatic and she was being reasonable. And every time she did, it confirmed something important. Gail didn't think she'd get caught. But that wasn't the worst part, because the wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a deadline. And the closer it got, the more desperate Gail became. Paige's fiancé was Trent Bergstrom. I didn't know Trent well. He always seemed polite, maybe too quiet in our family's chaos. The kind of man who nodded a lot at dinners and laughed at Gail's jokes like he didn't want conflict. Gail loved that about him. She liked men who didn't ask too many questions. What Gail didn't expect was that Trent's parents, Lloyd and Janine Bergstrom, were the kind of people who did ask questions when money was involved. Warren's strategy wasn't revenge. It was protection. He said, "We don't destroy them. We stop the fraud, we secure your assets, and we let consequences land where they land." Then he sent a formal legal notice to the Bergstrom family's attorney stating that funds tied to the wedding may be disputed due to an active fraud investigation. That letter didn't insult Paige. It didn't threaten Trent. It didn't scream. It simply stated facts. And facts are powerful because you can't guilt-trip facts. The Bergstroms didn't call Gail to argue. They called their attorney. And their attorney told them something that made the whole wedding wobble. If Paige knowingly benefited from stolen funds, and if restitution or judgments followed, marital assets could become complicated. The wedding wasn't just emotionally messy, it was legally risky. A day later, I got a call I never expected. Trent Bergstrom called me directly. His voice sounded careful, like he was walking through a room full of glass. He said, "Maddie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did your mom really sell your condo?" I could have screamed. I could have cried. I could have given him a speech that poured years of favoritism onto the table. But Warren had taught me the smartest way to speak, with proof. So I told Trent the truth, short and clear. I told him about the voicemail, the power of attorney I signed under sedation, the bank withdrawals, and the forged consent statement. I told him there was video. I told him there was an investigation. I told him I was recovering from surgery while all of this happened. And I added one line that I didn't even plan to say, but it came out anyway. "Trent!" Paige didn't ask if I lived. Trent went silent. Then he asked, "Did Paige know ahead of time?" I didn't accuse without basis. I told him I didn't know everything yet, but I told him Paige had texted me afterward telling me not to make it about me, and that alone said something. Trent whispered, "Okay." Then he said, "Thank you for telling me," and he hung up. What happened next changed everything, because Trent didn't confront Paige in a dramatic showdown. He didn't call Gail and explode. He did something quieter and far more damaging to Paige's fantasy. He postponed the wedding. Not canceled that day, not a screaming fight, just a calm postponement until things are cleared up. That small sentence hit the wedding plans like a hammer. Paige called me within minutes, furious. She didn't start with concern. She started with blame. She said I'd ruined her life. She said I was jealous. She said I always wanted to punish her for being happy. I listened without interrupting. Then I said, "Paige, my spine is healing with metal in it, and you're calling to yell at me because you can't have imported desserts. Please stop." And I hung up. Then Gail called. This time her voice wasn't sweet, it was sharp. She said, "How could you do this to your sister?" She said, "Family doesn't turn on family." She said, "Your grandmother would be ashamed." That line almost broke me, because Beverly Walton was the only person in my family who had ever made me feel seen. And to hear Gail use Beverly as a weapon was like watching someone smear mud on a clean window. But I didn't argue. I just said, "Get a lawyer," and I ended the call. 2 days later, an investigator visited Gail. According to the report we later received, Gail tried to explain it away at first. She claimed she did it for the family. She claimed I would get over it. She talked like she was a manager moving money around, not a mother stealing her daughter's home. Then the investigator laid out the evidence. The power of attorney obtained under false pretenses, the forged consent statement, the notary's irregularities, Glenn Sheehan's emails proving pre-planning, and Donna Litvak's time-stamped footage. Gail stopped talking. And that was the beginning of the end. The wedding date arrived, and there was no wedding. No dramatic scene at the altar. No movie-style shouting in a ballroom. Just silence. The venue rebooked the space. The planner sent cancellation terms. Paige stayed in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by dresses and decorations that now looked less like celebration and more like a museum exhibit titled Consequences. Meanwhile, I was in Josie's guest room, walking slow laps with a physical therapy band, rebuilding my strength one careful step at a time. And for the first time since surgery, I felt something close to relief, not because I wanted Paige to suffer, but because the theft no longer felt invisible. People knew. The truth was no longer trapped in my chest. Weeks passed. The civil case moved faster than the criminal one because courts understand property needs urgent decisions. The judge reviewed evidence, heard testimony, and issued an order voiding the sale. The deed reverted back to me. The dispute notice remained until everything fully settled. Glenn Sheehan was reimbursed through legal channels while restitution was pursued from Gail. Glenn didn't deserve to be collateral damage. He got pulled into a fraud he didn't create. The day I returned to my condo, I moved like an old woman, one slow step at a time, but I made it. Donna Litvak met me outside my door with flowers so bright they looked like a sunrise. I unlocked my home and stepped inside. My kitchen still smelled faintly like the candle I'd left behind. My blanket was still on the couch. Nothing had been packed because I had never sold anything. It was like walking back into my own life after someone tried to erase me. I stood there and cried, not from pain, but from the strange grief of almost losing the only safe place I'd ever owned. But the story wasn't over, because justice doesn't end when you get your property back. Justice ends when the behavior is confronted in a way that stops it from repeating. The notary, Harold Fenn, faced serious penalties for notarizing documents without proper verification. His commission was revoked. He became the first domino, proof that shortcuts have a cost. Then Gail was charged. Felony charges, not the kind you talk your way out of at a family dinner table. Real charges with dates and courtrooms and fingerprints. Gail hired an attorney, but the evidence was heavy. The forged consent statement was especially damaging because it showed intention. It wasn't an oops, it was a decision. As the case unfolded, another ugly truth surfaced. This wasn't the first time Gail had handled family assets in a way that benefited her plans. Old estate paperwork from when Robert died raised questions about items that should have been distributed and weren't. The pattern mattered. It showed this wasn't a sudden act of desperation. It was a habit, waiting for a chance. Paige wasn't spared either. Investigators recovered messages showing Paige had at least an awareness that Gail was going to make it work, even if I didn't cooperate. Paige didn't go to prison in this fictional story, but she did face legal consequences, probation, community service, and a record that followed her into every job application and every fresh start she tried to claim. Trent Bergstrom ended the engagement quietly. No public humiliation, just a clean exit. The kind of exit that says, I finally see what I'm marrying into, and I'm choosing peace. And me. I healed. I went back to Maplewood Animal Clinic part-time, then full-time. The first animal I helped after returning was a stubborn old beagle who refused to walk until I offered a treat. I remember laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months, because the dog didn't care about lawsuits or betrayals. He cared about kindness and snacks. Sometimes life gives you small reminders that you're still human. I opened new accounts at a new bank. I locked down my documents. I wrote a will. I named Josie Callahan as the person who could act for me if I ever couldn't speak for myself, because trust should be earned, not assumed. Warren Ostrowski helped me do it properly, and he said something I'll never forget. Most people think planning is pessimism, but planning is protection. Months later, when the noise settled, I sat on my condo balcony with a mug of coffee and watched the sky turn soft over Greenville. And I thought about Beverly Walton. I thought about how she tried to protect me with her will. I thought about how right she was to worry. And I thought about the lesson that took me far too long to learn. You can love people and still need boundaries. You can be kind and still say no. And the people who benefit from your silence will always call you selfish the moment you speak. I didn't win because I ruined a wedding. I won because I stopped being the family's emergency fund, the quiet fixer, the responsible one who was expected to bleed so someone else could sparkle. I chose accountability over approval, and that choice gave me my life back. If this story hit close to home, tell me in the comments what part stood out to you most. Was it the betrayal, the proof, or the moment the truth finally reached the wedding? And if you want more fictional, emotional justice stories like this, please like the video, subscribe, and stay with us. Because sometimes the strongest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's rebuilding without the people who broke you.